Hey friends, I'm excited to share with you today our family's thoughts on Sonlight Science Level K. This program is a combination of multiple different topics within the realm of science, including ecosystems, meteorology, physics, and engineering design, but at a kindergarten appropriate level. My family is just now finishing this up, so we have done pretty much all of the program, and I'm going to share with you today's review from the vantage point of a mom who is not a scientist, is not coming with a bunch of science background, but really does appreciate Sonlight's approach to science. If you are new here, my name is Sarah and I would love to meet you in the comments, so introduce yourself there. I have a bunch of things sitting beside me here and I'm going to try to do this really methodically and very quickly with some really quick thoughts on different aspects of the program. The first thing that I want to talk about is just the instructor's guide itself. Something that I found really helpful was keeping this separate from Sonlight's other core subjects that are included in their HBL or History Bible Literature program. If you like to have everything all in one place, that might be helpful for you, but this is a pretty hefty teacher's guide, and so I just liked having it all together. One thing I did to make this work was I went to Staples in the United States and actually got it spiral bound together, and that was really helpful. I prefer that to having a big huge binder, but it does mean that it's not as easy to take out pages and photocopy them for student use. So there are worksheets in here and I could have kept those separate. So if you are looking at spiral binding, you might want to keep your student worksheets separate or to have multiple copies, one in the binder and one outside the binder, just to make it easier. Well, it's not a huge deal, but it would have been helpful to have those separate. Now, speaking of the student worksheet pages, I do have a thought about that. These were beautiful, they were colorful, my kids did really well with them, but there are some parts of the worksheets that were not appropriate for kindergarten level as far as writing and ability to discern answers. And so what we did is we just adjusted these worksheets. If there were cut and paste sections, I would help my kids figure out the words on the cut and paste pieces and we would glue them together. Or if there was a writing section, I would just have them tell me verbally their answer, or we would just discuss it separately from the paper itself. Sometimes I actually did not photocopy these worksheets because there were entire pages that were just writing. And so that's something that you can be aware of. If you are using this with a kindergarten level student, I would suggest that you probably don't have to have a set of worksheets for that student specifically. You could probably just do this either in page protectors and having them use dry erase markers, or you could also just have a lot of verbal answers. It's not completely key at this level to have a written example, I think in most states, of the work that was done in science. I'm not quite sure about those requirements in every state, so you'll have to check with your state about proof of actual learning that you need to provide to the state. Okay, that is the teacher's guide, and there are helpful answer sheets after each week. And you can see from the teacher's guide schedule that it's not a very rigorous program as far as a ton of reading every single day. Instead, you have very manageable chunks. And sometimes this felt like a little bit, and other times it felt like it was just enough. Most of the time it felt like it was just enough reading to give us a snippet each day. And at this level of kindergarten, what I like to do, what I prefer to do, is rather than having a huge chunk of reading over the whole week, for the whole week within a day, is to actually split up the reading and be reminded day after day after day and have that repetition and reminder of what we're actually learning. So I found that really helpful, that kind of methodology of just having little snippets. The next thing I will talk about is the experiments. So this is another book that comes with the program if you buy the complete package, and this is very heavy and hefty, and we actually didn't do the experiments. We might have tried one or two. We did a weather tracking experiment, but this wasn't necessary for our family and for this level because I have multiple young children. Just making the experiments happen wasn't absolutely necessary. So just keep that in mind. If you are in a season of life where you're really busy, you don't have to do the experiments for the program to work, but also it is something you can add in if you do like having more hands-on things. What we did instead of doing the actual experiments is we used the videos. this was probably my son's favorite part of this program. I have 2 boys, they are 4 years old and almost 6 years old, and they loved our weekly videos of the experiments. And they would just like look forward to the day every week where we could do that. And they demonstrate the experiment that is basically in this book for you and the results that are supposed to happen. And so I found that a lot easier to just show that and discuss it with my kids than to actually perform the experiments. Again, I don't think that science experiments are absolutely necessary at this level, but they can be super fun. And so it was fun having that option. And we do have the actual science supply kit, which can be very helpful, especially living overseas. Getting certain pieces for the experiments could be a little bit difficult, but it was also heavy to bring, and this book was heavy to bring. So if you live outside of the US, you can consider leaving these 2 parts out of the program if you're concerned about shipping costs or just fitting things within your bags. But otherwise, if you really like hands-on stuff, then this looks like it would be a great option. Okay, the other books that are included in the program, there are not a ton of books with this, but there are some really great books covering the topics that are covered. Okay, we loved this series. This is the Usborne, I'm not exactly sure, Usborne Beginners series. These are science books that are very, very well written for this age level. And let me just show you inside of, I think this was the first one we read. It was about ants. And my boys learned so much through these books. They were perfectly fitted to the program, and we read about a page spread per day. So there was just a bit of information, and it was enough to talk about and learn more about, and we kept reviewing what we had learned as we went along in the program. And my boys still talk about like the ants' superpowers and how they can protect themselves, and it's just very interesting. The topics that are covered through these books are ants, bees and wasps, another favorite, reptiles, weather, and rainforests. And these are probably available at libraries, so not absolutely necessary to own, but I think we will be rereading these, so they're really great resources. Another favorite was the Magic School Bus, of course, and this one is actually like the full Magic School Bus book. We have some little readers that are kind of kindergarten level that I really like reading to my boys. This one has a ton of information. It was about a hurricane, as you can see, and it was a little bit harder to follow than the Usborne books because there's an ongoing story instead of little snippets, and we're kind of dividing the pages up over multiple days. So we would kind of have to review a little bit before we went on, but it was still really good, and my boys picked up enough from it that I felt really satisfied with actually using this to learn about hurricanes. At this level, I'm not super concerned about them completely mastering every concept within the science program. Another book that we enjoyed was From Seed to Plant. My boys love seeds. We have little window gardens, and they're fascinated by the process of how seeds develop into plants. And so this was another one that we split up over multiple days. It was very manageable. Again, just a few pages. We had questions to follow up each day so we could check on comprehension. Some other books were not exactly my favorite because the information felt like it was drinking from a fire hydrant, and it wasn't exactly written for kindergarten level. One example was the Wells of Knowledge Science Series, Why Do Elephants Need the Sun? Now, for an advanced student or a first grader who's joining in this program, this might be perfect. For my boys, just the concept of going over gravity and the sun and all of these things was a little much. I think that they will grow into it, and I do have a younger kindergartner, so this might actually be right on track for normal aged kindergartners. As you can see, it's just a little bit more technical, and it is scheduled toward the end of the year, so that makes sense. But I do admire the author of this series, Robert E. Wells, and he has great information. It just didn't feel like it was completely kindergarten level. Okay, another book that we enjoyed was the Little Kid's First Big Book of Why from National Geographic Kids. Now, this book does not exactly tie into the topics that are covered each week in the program, but it covers a lot of different questions that this age group has, which I find really helpful because my boys have so many questions about why things are the way that they are. Something to note is that what I've noticed about all of the National Geographic Kids books that we've ever purchased is their binding is not super secure. And so we've actually lost some pages out of this. Not very happy with that, but the book is gorgeously illustrated with pictures and other illustrations, and again, manageable chunks of information. Just really random questions that are really fun to talk about. And so that was enjoyable. A book that I don't have with me right now, but is also in the program, is called DK Find Out Science. Now this one, similar to the Robert E. Wells book, is a bit more advanced, and it is scheduled at the end of the year. So I understand the development of the course, but this one is a little bit harder for us to get into, and I feel like there's a lot of information there that is way over my boy's head, but we can revisit it in the future. It's kind of more like a reference book, in my opinion, like a little encyclopedia for science. So we will probably come back to it. Just that was not my favorite of all the book choices. But overall, A+ on the books and their tie-ins and the topics that were chosen for this curriculum. Okay. If you want to add a little bit more rigor or just a little more exploration of the topics covered in this program, there are a few books that we found helpful. The first book that we used alongside of Sonlight Science Level K is the Very Hungry Caterpillar's very first animal encyclopedia. I have a look inside, flip through video on my channel that you can check out, linked in the description box below. But this was perfect, especially for those first units about ants and bees and wasps and rainforests. Another book that we love and we are still currently reading is What Are You Doing Today, Mother Nature? And this just explores other topics and different things that happen in countries around the world. Very enjoyable, very beautiful, something that we will keep revisiting in the future. And then if you find that the Robert E. Wells book and the DK Find Out Science are just a little bit over your kid's head, like they are mine, there is a book from an earlier Sonlight program that is a little more on track with this age group, and that is the Berenstain Bears Big Book of Science and Nature. And I think we will be revisiting the chapter or section in this book about the science fair to go over topics like machines and force and water cycle, I think, is included in here, and all of those things. It also goes over classification of animals and living things, and so it's just a really helpful background resource for maybe topics that are still a little bit too advanced for young kids. Okay, those are my thoughts about this entire program. If you have questions, let me know in the comments below. I always invite conversation and discussion over these topics. Overall, A+ from this program. For this program from our family. My boys love it. They love science, especially the videos. So thank you, Luke Colesman. They are delightful. Thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Until next time, ciao.